11 time zones, 17 million square kilometers, a territory that stretches from the Baltic Sea to the Pacific Ocean, connecting two continents in the process. Russia is not only the largest country on Earth by area, it is a continent unto itself, a world full of geological extremes, evolutionary peculiarities, and ecological refuges that have long since been lost elsewhere on this planet. While Europe tames its last wildernesses and Asia groans under the pressure of growing populations, spaces still exist here that humans have barely touched. Places where evolution proceeds according to its own laws and where the geological forces of our planet still operate unhindered. This documentary undertakes a scientific expedition to 5 of these extraordinary natural spaces. We follow the traces of biologists, geologists, and climate researchers attempting to understand what these landscapes tell us about the past of our planet and what they might reveal about its future. If you want to learn more about the last great wildernesses of our Earth, subscribe to this channel. Southern Siberia, 455 meters above sea level. Here between the mountain ranges of the Baikal Mountains and the Kamchatka lies the deepest continental body of water on Earth, Lake Baikal. "636 kilometers long, an average of 48 kilometers wide, at its deepest point 1,642 meters deep. Yet these numbers do not capture what is essential. Baikal is a window into geological history. At 25 to 30 million years old, it is the oldest existing lake on our planet. For comparison, most lakes disappear after 10,000 to 20,000 years, silted up, filled in, evaporated. The fact that Baikal still exists is due to a geological special case. It lies in an active rift valley that widens by approximately 2 centimeters annually. The lake is therefore not becoming shallower but deeper. This tectonic process has created over millions of years a water reservoir without equal. Lake Baikal contains 23,615 cubic kilometers of fresh water, more than the Great Lakes of North America combined. This corresponds to approximately 20% of all freshwater reserves on Earth. The extraordinary purity of this water, with visibility depths of up to 40 meters, is thanks to a tiny crustacean, Epilogue. These copepods, only 1.5 millimeters in size, continuously filter the water and feed on algae and bacteria. Their population is estimated at quadrillions of individuals, a biological filter of planetary significance. Of the more than 2,600 known animal and plant species in Baikal, approximately 80% exist exclusively here. They are endemic, products of isolated evolution over millions of years. The Baikal seal, Pusa siberica, is the only seal species that spends its entire life in fresh water. How their ancestors reached this landlocked lake from the Arctic Ocean, an estimated 500,000 years ago, is one of the most fascinating biogeographical questions. The most likely hypothesis: they followed the river system of the Yenisei and its tributaries during a glacial period. In winter, temperatures drop to -35 degrees Celsius. The lake freezes to an ice layer over 1 meter thick. Yet, this ice is not opaque like in other bodies of water. It is transparent. One can see through it all the way to the bottom, several meters deep. The explanation is physically simple. The water of Baikal is extraordinarily clear and contains hardly any suspended particles. During freezing, therefore, nearly perfect ice crystals form. The Buryats, a Mongolian people who have lived on the shores of Baikal for centuries, call it Dalai, the sacred sea. Their shamanistic traditions venerate the lake as an unsouled being to whom respect and offerings are due. In 1996, UNESCO declared Lake Baikal a World Natural Heritage Site. The justification: outstanding universal value for science and nature conservation. It is a recognition of its uniqueness and at the same time a mandate for the protection of this fragile ecosystem. East of Siberia, between the Sea of Okhotsk and the Pacific, lies a peninsula of 270,000 square kilometers, larger than Great Britain, more sparsely populated than Alaska. Kamchatka. Over 300 volcanoes shape this landscape. 29 of them are considered active. Kamchatka is part of the Pacific Ring of Fire, that 40,000-kilometer-long volcanic belt where 90% of all earthquakes on Earth occur. The Klushevskaya Sopka, at 4,750 meters, the highest active volcano in Eurasia, is almost constantly active. Its last major eruption occurred in 2013. Ash clouds rose up to 12 kilometers high into the stratosphere. The volcano is young, geologically speaking. It only formed about 7,000 years ago and continues to grow with each eruption. Kamchatka is a natural laboratory for volcanology. Nowhere else on Earth can we observe so many different volcano types in such a confined space. Stratovolcanoes, shield volcanoes, caldera systems, and all in an active stage. For us, this is like an open book of Earth's history. The Valley of Geysers, discovered by chance in 1941 by geologist Tatyana Ustinova, is one of the largest geyser fields in the world. About 90 geysers and several hundred hot springs are concentrated in 6 square kilometers. The Velikan geyser, the giant, erupts every 5 to 7 hours. Its fountain reaches heights of up to 40 meters at temperatures of a constant 95 degrees Celsius. The regularity of this eruption follows a hydrothermal cycle. Underground chambers fill with water that is heated by volcanic heat. When the pressure reaches a critical point, the superheated water explodes to the surface. The color palette of this landscape is not aesthetic whimsy, but chemical precision. Yellow deposits, elemental sulfur, orange and red, iron oxides, white, silica, and gypsum. Each color tells of the elements being transported up from the depths of the Earth's crust. Kamchatka is home to one of the densest brown bear populations in the world. Estimates range from 20,000 to 30,000 animals in an area half the size of Germany. In summer, during the salmon migration, 50 or more bears can gather at a single river section. The relationship between bears and salmon here is symbiotic at the ecosystem level. The bears catch the salmon, preferentially eat the fat-rich parts, and leave the rest. These carcasses become nutrient sources for the forest. Analyses show that up to 80% of the nitrogen in trees along salmon rivers comes from the sea, transported by the fish, concentrated by the bears. Kurilskoye Lake, a crater lake of 77 square kilometers, is the scene of one of the largest salmon concentrations in the Western Hemisphere. Up to 40 million sockeye salmon spawn here every autumn. The water turns red from their bodies. In 1975, the Tolbachik volcano erupted. The eruption lasted 18 months. Approximately 2 billion cubic meters of lava covered an area of 40 square kilometers. Entire forests were buried. Today, almost 50 years later, nature is beginning to return. Lichens colonize the cooled lava. Mosses follow. In another 100 years, trees will stand here again. Kamchatka was declared a UNESCO World Natural Heritage Site in 1996 under the title Volcanoes of Kamchatka. The justification honors not only the geological significance, but also the ecological integrity of this landscape. One of the last that still harbors all its original large mammal species. The boreal coniferous forests of the Northern Hemisphere, the Taiga, form the largest contiguous forest belt on Earth. From Scandinavia across Siberia to North America, this zone extends over 15 million square kilometers. The Russian portion comprises approximately 8 million square kilometers. That is twice the area of the entire European Union. Conifers adapted to extreme conditions dominate here. Siberian larch, Siberian spruce, Siberian pine. They survive winter temperatures of -60 degrees Celsius and summer temperatures of +35 degrees Celsius. a temperature spectrum of 95 degrees. The annual rings of these trees are archives of climate. We can reconstruct from them temperatures, precipitation, and even volcanic events, often with year-precise resolutions reaching back several centuries. These trees are living climate instruments. The taiga is a refuge for species that have disappeared in Europe. The Amur taiga, also called the Siberian taiga, is with up to 300 kilograms of body weight, the largest tiger subspecies. Only about 500 animals still roam the forests in the border region between Russia and China. A single male requires a territory of up to 1,000 square kilometers. This number illustrates better than any statistic the vastness and pristineness of these forests. Wolves, lynxes, wolverines, and the sable, whose fur was more valuable than gold in the Middle Ages and led to the opening up of Siberia, have also survived here. On June 30th, 1908, around 7 a.m., an explosion of an estimated 10 to 15 megatons TNT equivalent occurred over the Tunguska region, about 1,000 times more powerful than the Hiroshima bomb. 2,000 square kilometers of forest were devastated. 80 million trees snapped like matchsticks in a radial pattern emanating from the explosion center. The most likely explanation, an asteroid or comet about 50 to 80 meters in diameter, exploded at an altitude of 5 to 10 kilometers. The pressure of the explosion was so tremendous that seismic waves were registered as far as Western Europe. Over 100 years later, the traces are still visible. Young trees grow between the toppled trunks of the old generation. Nature is slowly erasing this event as well. The taiga is more than a forest. It is a climatic system of global significance. These forests store approximately 700 billion tons of carbon, more than the entire atmosphere contains. They produce oxygen and influence air currents across the entire northern hemisphere. When we speak of the lungs of the earth, most people think of the Amazon. But the boreal forests are at least as important, perhaps more important, because in addition to carbon, they also hold back greenhouse gases stored in permafrost. The taiga is also home to indigenous peoples, Evenks, Yakuts, Nenets, reindeer herders, and hunters whose cultures have depended on and shaped this ecosystem for millennia. The silence of these forests is not emptiness, but fullness, a complexity that eludes superficial observation. In Yakutia, the largest and coldest republic of Russia, a rocky landscape rises along the Lena River that, in its monumentality, recalls another world. The Lena pillars, vertical limestone walls up to 200 meters high, extending over 40 kilometers along the river. These rocks formed 540 to 400 million years ago in the Cambrian and Ordovician, those geological periods in which the explosion of life took place. In their layers are found fossils of early trilobites, brachiopods, and corals. The Lena pillars are a paleontological archive of inestimable value. Here we can trace the evolution of life over 100 million years. Preserved in limestone, deposited in a shallow sea that has long since disappeared. The Lena, at 4,400 kilometers, one of the longest rivers on Earth, freezes completely in winter. In May, the ice breaks up, an event of brutal force. Meter-thick ice plates pile up on top of each other, driven by the current of meltwater. The noise is deafening. Yakutia lies in the center of the continental permafrost zone. The ground is frozen year-round, in some places to a depth of 1,500 meters. In this permafrost are found the remains of the Ice Age, mammoth carcasses, woolly rhinoceroses, cave lions, preserved for over 10,000 years. Further north, already beyond the Arctic Circle, lies Wrangel Island in the Arctic Ocean. It is one of the most remote islands on Earth and home to the world's highest concentration of polar bear birthing dens. In March and April, the bear mothers leave the snow dens with their cubs. The young weigh less than 1 kilogram at birth. When they leave the den for the first time, they have gained approximately 10 to 15 kilograms, solely from the fat-rich mother's milk. Wrangel Island is a critical habitat for polar bears. With the decline of Arctic sea ice, it is becoming more difficult for bears to hunt seals. Islands like Wrangel are becoming increasingly important as refuges and birthing sites. The island also harbors the world's largest colony of Pacific walruses. Up to 100,000 animals gather on the coasts in late summer, as well as a population of musk oxen, shaggy survivors from the last ice age. In the brief Arctic summer, the island explodes in color. Over 400 plant species bloom, more than on any other Arctic island. It is a hotspot of Arctic biodiversity. In 2004, UNESCO declared Wrangel Island a World Natural Heritage Site with the justification outstanding as a paleontological archive of the Ice Age and as a place of highest biodiversity in the Arctic. In southern Russia, between the Black and Caspian Seas, rises a mountain range that separates Europe and Asia, not only geographically, but also culturally: the Caucasus. Over 1,200 kilometers long, with more than 50 peaks over 4,000 meters in height. The highest among them is Mount Elbrus at 5,642 meters, a dormant volcano with 2 characteristic peaks, glaciated year-round. Whether it belongs to Europe or Asia depends on where one draws the border between the continents. Usually, Elbrus is counted as the highest mountain in Europe. The glaciers of Elbrus feed over 70 rivers. Since measurements began in the 19th century, the glaciers have lost approximately 30% of their mass. Some scientists predict that they could completely disappear by the end of the century. The Caucasus is a biodiversity hotspot. About 6,400 plant species grow here. Of these, 1,600 are endemic. They exist nowhere else on Earth. The fauna is equally remarkable. The Caucasian ibex, the Caucasian tur, a wild goat species, as well as brown bears, lynxes, and the Caucasian leopard, a subspecies of the Persian leopard that was believed extinct until a few years ago. In 2003, a Caucasian leopard was documented in the wild for the last time. It was assumed that the species was extinct. Then in 2013, camera trap images appeared. Today there is a reintroduction program. It is one of the greatest nature conservation success stories of the region. The landscape forms of the Caucasus are dramatic. Deep gorges like the Pankizi Gorge or the Aragvi Gorge cut through the mountains. Waterfalls plunge hundreds of meters into the depths. In early summer, the alpine meadows transform into seas of flowers, rhododendrons, gentians, primroses, and over 50 endemic orchid species color the slopes in every conceivable hue. The Caucasus is also a cultural treasure trove. Over 50 ethnic groups live in these mountains, more linguistic and cultural diversity than in all of Western Europe. Some of the languages spoken here are isolates with no recognizable relationship to other language families. In 1999, the Western Caucasus was declared a UNESCO World Natural Heritage Site as one of the last great untouched mountain wildernesses of Europe. From the deepest lake on Earth to the highest peaks of Europe, from fire-breathing volcanoes to eternal ice, from forests older than writing to rocks that document the origin of life itself. Russia's natural spaces are more than spectacular backdrops. They are functional ecosystems of planetary significance. The Taiga regulates atmospheric processes across entire hemispheres. Baikal stores genetic information from millions of years of evolution. The Arctic refuges are archives of biological adaptation to extreme conditions. Yet even these remote regions do not remain untouched. Economic development, increasing tourism, and infrastructural development are changing areas that remained virtually untouched for millennia. Scientists from all over the world are working to understand the dynamics of these ecosystems, their resilience, their limits, their significance for planetary balance. The great wildernesses of the Earth are finite. They do not exist outside the human sphere, but increasingly in interaction with it. What we preserve and what we change, we are not making these decisions in the distant future. We are making them now. Russia's natural wonders remind us that the Earth knows processes that extend over time periods exceeding our imagination. Volcanoes that have been active for millions of years, lakes older than humanity, forests that have survived ice ages. If you would like to continue this journey to the most spectacular natural spaces on Earth, then subscribe to this channel now and activate the bell so you don't miss any expedition. Share this documentary with others who are enthusiastic about natural science and the wonders of our Earth. Leave us your thoughts in the comments. Which of these places fascinated you the most? Which region should we explore next? Thank you for accompanying us on this journey.